Look at those mountains, man. That is a smoky haze. The fire, Grand County right on the other side of those mountains. And another fire like on the other side of these mountains. So we got one fire to the northeast and one fire to the west over those mountains. Hey guys, doing Eric here. Today is Friday, June 28th, 2018. Another warm summer day up here in Gilpin County. And smoky. We got fire all around us. Luckily, I think the nearest one is probably maybe 10 to 20 miles away. So, but the smoke travels a long ways. And it's really smoky today. It's kind of making me feel kind of sick, breathing all this smoke in, and it's not healthy. Shouldn't be doing too much heavy activity when it's smoky like this, but what are you gonna do? Anyways, another day off today I had, taking care of some business. Had to go talk to an insurance agent, and she's working on my insurance policies, and so that's something, another thing I got taken care of today. So hopefully I get all this shit taken care of so I can go on with my life. Anyways, yeah, since it's like the end of June here, and last week was the birthday of George Carlin, one of my favorite probably no, my #1 favorite comic of all time. I think if you ask me my opinion, George Carlin was the greatest comic that ever lived, in my opinion. But yeah, I thought I would talk today about some of my favorite comics, because I've always been a big fan of comedy. And since, you know, I was gonna make a video about the 10-year anniversary of George Carlin's death, which was, I think it was like on the 22nd. So he died 10 years ago on June 22nd. And yeah, time goes by fast, but yeah, I can't believe it's been 10 years since George Carlin passed away. Anyway, yeah, you know, George Carlin started out as like a kind of a straight, you know, I think he started off on a radio program he had with another guy, and then he just started doing like TV shows and shit, like just variety shows and stuff. And he was kind of straight laced back then, you know. It was back when TV was still black and white and all that. And then I think he said that when he really changed is when he tried acid. He did acid a couple times, he said, and that really changed his whole routine, his whole style. Doing acid just woke him up, basically. He became awake. And after that, man, he became a real pain in the system's ass, man, because he was just always exposing all the fucking crap of the world, you know, way ahead of his time. Which brings me to another comic that I really like. My other second favorite comic of all time, Bill Hicks, who really shook up the fucking mainstream. You know, he really bucked the system. And you know, he talked about, you know, all the hypocrisies of our world, you know, of our culture, and you know, the problem with drug prohibition. And I like the one routine he talked about where he's like, yeah, I've done drugs. I used to do drugs, and I gotta tell you, I had a really good time. Didn't lose one job, didn't get in any trouble. Hate to break it to you folks, but that was hilarious. You know, he's like, and then another one he did where like he talked about, you know, why can't they talk about a good drug experience on the news? Like, today, a kid on acid realized that we are just a subconscious, the universe subjectively experiencing itself, and that all matter is just energy slowed down to a slow vibration, and we are just the universe subjectively experiencing itself. Now here's Bob with the weather. Like, another, you know. And then he talked about how all they ever talk about when they talk about LSD is like some kid today took LSD and thought he could fly and jumped off a building and died. You know, Bill Hicks was like, what an asshole. Why couldn't he try it from the ground first to see if he could fly before he went off a building? He ruined it for the rest of us. Another one of Hicks' famous routines. This is just a ride. It's real fancy and elaborate. There's loud bells and whistles and music and lights. And it's like a roller coaster, but it's just a ride. And other people have been on the ride before and they'll say, don't worry about anything because I remember what's going on and it's just a ride. There's no such thing as death and this isn't real. And then he talks about how some rich dude, this has to be real. Look at my bank account. Look at how important I am. And he's like, the people that point out that it's just a ride, we kill those people. And also, you know, I find interesting is the whole Bill Hicks, Alex Jones controversy. That it's kind of interesting. I can't deny or confirm it, but that Bill Hicks is Alex Jones. If you look at their two faces side by side, they do look a lot alike, man. They have the same exact teeth too. So, you know, could be, man. Who knows? But supposedly Bill Hicks died at the age of 34, I think, of pancreatic cancer. But yeah, he was him and Carlin were the two most, you know, awake, exposing, you know, all the shit that goes on in our culture, basically. And now they're both dead. It's kind of interesting. So, you know, that's the power that comics have, you know. Like Carlin, he was more than just a fucking comedian, you know. He was, I looked at him as a philosopher, you know. He had some really, he talked about a lot about religion, which he hated religion. They got us convinced there's a man in the sky. And he's watching everything we do. And he's got a list of 10 things that we're not supposed to do. And if we do any of those 10 things, he's got a place for us. And it's full of fire and smoke and and suffering and pain and agony. And if you don't do what he says, he's going to send you there. But he loves you. It's just brilliant, man. It's so true. And I think I get a lot of my ideas about, you know, a lot of things from George Carlin, man. He's really been a big inspiration. But like Bill Hicks, you know, he started out in comedy when he was still in high school. And then he would go out to the clubs. And back then he was still kind of, he wasn't like he was at the end of his career, but you know, he started going to these comic clubs when he was still in high school, and he became the most popular person in the club over all the adult comedians. The man was a genius. So yeah, man, thinking about who are all my favorite comedians, man, it's hard to name them all, you know. Like, big fan of Richard Pryor. You know, he's like one extreme of the really, really filthy mouth comedian, where, you know, he just didn't give a shit, man. He's just total filth. And you got a guy like Eddie Murphy, more clean but still a little bit filthy. Yeah, he was pretty filthy, Murphy. I was a big fan of Eddie Murphy. The two black comedians. Bill Cosby, when I was a kid, a friend of mine had a record of his father. We used to go listen to it a lot. And he taught, you know, it's funny, on that record, Bill Cosby talked about drugging women with Spanish fly. He said he went to Spain to try to get some Spanish fly, and he was going to ask the cab driver where he could get some Spanish fly, and the cab driver turns around to him and says, you know where I can get some American fly? So yeah, that's kind of interesting. I remember that routine, and then all this shit that happened to Cosby. You know, he's fucked now. I guess he may spend the rest of his life behind bars, but I strongly doubt it. You know, it's all a bunch of bullshit, like the fucking OJ thing. I think Bill Cosby pissed somebody off. I guess he said some shit about Trump, from what I understand. And after that, all this shit came out on him. And that's how it works with these celebrities. They're all compromised, and if they get out of line, they end up getting exposed. And I think that's what's happened to Cosby. He pissed off Trump. He said some shit about Trump. But anyway, who else? Chris Rock, great comic, big fan of him. I don't know how to explain Chris Rock. I don't think he's real filthy, but he's just funny, man. Who else? D.L. Hughley's funny for a black comic. See, Maria Bamford, great lady comic. Kathleen Madigan. I listen to the comedy channel, man. That's all I listen to when I'm driving in my car. So I get exposed to a lot of comedians. But there's different styles, you know. Like Bill Hicks and George Carlin were the extreme, you know, truth. They truthed, you know, and they exposed a lot of truth. But that's the big problem with comics and you know, and the powers that be. The powers that be, you know, they don't like comics because comics have a lot of power. People will listen to comedians, you know, where comedians could get away with saying things, you know, that a lot of other people can't, and people, you know, will laugh at it. But through that whole process, a lot of truths that the powers that be don't want to be exposed get exposed. That's why I think they might have murdered Carlin. Even he was like, I think he was like, he must have been 71 when he died. Yeah, I think he was in pretty good health. So I think they gave him a heart attack shot. Helicopter. Where is it? Where's the chopper? It must be going to fight that fire. Oh, there it is. Hurry, we gotta get to the chopper! Come on! Yeah, I think, you know, and maybe they murdered Bill Hicks too, I don't know. Bill Hicks, you know, he really exposed a lot of shit. You know, he talked about a lot of things, you know, how marijuana wasn't bad, how mushrooms and LSD really woke you up and squeeze your third eye. So yeah, these are, you know, that's what I'm trying to get at, you know, that the powers that be and comedians, you know, the power of the comedian, they have a lot of power in our culture. And the powers that be just don't like, a lot of times they start out under control, like George Carlin when he was younger, you know, he was clean and straight, and then he took acid and changed, and that's when they lost control of him. So yeah, I find it interesting, man, the power of the comedian. You know, I really admire comedians, man. It takes a lot of guts to get out there and, you know, in front of a crowd of people and try to make them laugh, a crowd of strangers that you've never even met. You know, I think it's a very noble profession. But some of the comics I don't really care for, maybe Daniel Tosh. I mean, he's funny, but I just don't like him, man. And then there's like Louis C.K., very funny guy. But yeah, I don't know. I really don't care much for him either. I don't know why. But yeah, he's one of those more outlaw comics, like. But I think, you know. But a lot of these comics are still controlled. You know, they like to make fun of shit. You know, like the good old stereotypes of Canada. They always talk about how, you know, they make fun of people that smoke weed. You know, like how they're stupid and, you know, lazy, and they get the munchies and everybody laughs. Ha ha ha! Oh, when I get high, I just want to go and eat some Doritos. Ha ha ha! I really hate that shit, man. It's just the stereotypes that the mainstream put out about marijuana, and comedians always perpetuate it. You know, the ones that are controlled by the fucking powers that be. Anyway, there's my little spiel about comedy and my favorite comedians of all time. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you guys soon.